How much of a breaking of diplomatic norm is it to ban two members of Congress?
Well, there's absolutely no precedent for it that I'm aware of. It was only about 3 or 4 weeks ago that the Israeli ambassador in Washington said that out of respect for the United States Congress and Israel's alliance with the United States, they would not deny entry to any member of Congress. And that's the appropriate approach between two allies. Israel's a strong democracy. It has nothing to hide. It grapples with serious security challenges, but it could have offered very serious briefings to these members of Congress, who obviously are critics, without in any way validating criticism that's unfair. And it's hard to understand exactly what changed in the last 3 or 4 weeks, other than pressure from President Donald Trump because of his decision to treat these members of Congress as foils for his brand of divisive racist politics. It almost put the Israeli Prime Minister, who tries to maintain a very close relationship with Trump, in an untenable position. And I think that was the reason for the reversal and this violation of a diplomatic norm.
President Trump tweeted this morning that Netanyahu and Israel would look weak if he let in these members of Congress. Did Netanyahu just bend to President Trump's demand?
It looks a lot like Prime Minister Netanyahu bent to President Trump's demand. Prime Minister Netanyahu is within a month of a very closely run election campaign. He counts on and advertises his close relationship with President Trump, that there's no daylight between them, as one of the assets that he brings to the Israeli voters. And if he were to go against Donald Trump's, essentially his instructions in that tweet, indeed, it would ruin the very storyline he's trying to bring to the Israeli voters as he runs for re-election. So I don't think he felt he could go against those instructions that you heard this morning.
How often are BDS supporters actually banned from entering Israel?
Israel has a law that says supporters of BDS, the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement, which is an anti-Israel movement, shouldn't be allowed into the country. But they're somewhat flexible, you might say inconsistent in how they apply that law. Sometimes activists who are well known are banned, sometimes they are known, and yet they're allowed in for various reasons. But what was clear in the statement of the Israeli ambassador about a month ago was that they understood that even when you're dealing with members of Congress who might support BDS, as at least one, if not both of these members of Congress have said they do, they are members of the United States Congress, which is the body that represents the American people, that provides critical and significant assistance for Israel's military and ability to defend itself. And out of respect for that institution, even if they hold those views, you should let them in. The law certainly provides for that flexibility.
So why would Prime Minister Netanyahu do this?
Prime Minister Netanyahu is 1 month from a re-election campaign that is very, very uncertain. He tried to secure another term in office in an election in April. He was not successful in forming a government. The main asset he brings to the Israeli public is that he has diplomatic skills and talents and relationships that no other candidate running in the Israeli election can match. He drapes tall buildings with posters of himself and President Trump shaking hands and smiling big smiles. This is his calling card for the Israeli public. And so when President Trump has decided that these members of Congress are his enemies and he's going to attack them as the foils of his brand of divisive racial politics in the United States, Prime Minister Netanyahu cannot be consistent with his own electoral message and go against President Trump's wishes.
Could this backfire for Israel?
I think this decision poses a major problem for Israel in maintaining the strong bipartisan support that has always been the foundation of the U.S.-Israel relationship. Many Democrats in Congress are strong supporters of Israel, strong supporters of its security and U.S. assistance, and opponents of BDS, and they've stuck their necks out even as Netanyahu and Trump have had this close relationship, even as Trump has been very divisive, and they've said, we're going to maintain that commitment to Israel and the U.S.-Israel relationship. But they've also asked that Israel be open to hearing the new voices within the constituencies that they represent, minority voices, progressives, Muslim Americans, and there were some very direct negotiations around this particular visit of the two congresswomen with some of Israel's best friends among the Democratic leadership in Congress. Various commitments were made, and they were not kept. This is the kind of decision that many voters, not to mention office holders, are going to remember and say, look, when we stick our necks out, why is it that our assistance is not returned in equal measure? So I think it's a very damaging thing, and I think it, unfortunately, is exactly what President Trump wants. President Trump wants to politicize every aspect of American politics, including the U.S.-Israel relationship. He has said the Democrats are an anti-Israel party and anti-Semitic parties. These are absurd slurs, but he's trying to get those ideas cemented into the public discourse, and so this serves what he's trying to do to a T.
Could this make it difficult for a future Democratic president to work with Israel?
I think any likely president who's going to emerge from the Democratic field is going to be consistently committed to the same principles that have always defined the party's positions on Israel: strong support for its legitimacy and security and the U.S.-Israel relationship, and the push for a two-state solution between Israelis and Palestinians. But you have to be, you have to expect that there is a human factor, and when people feel that they have been dismissed and disrespected, when people feel that Israel has taken sides in America's partisan political wars, it's not necessarily going to be the case that relations will be as comfortable or as smooth as they have been in the past. Nobody's going to throw that relationship overboard. It's too important to the United States and our interests and our values. But for us to work together with the same determination and the same intimacy that we have historically, Israel should take a different approach to how it deals with Democrats in the United States.
But there seems to be a widening rift between the Netanyahu government and Democrats, and a closeness between Republicans, certainly this president, and the Netanyahu government. What is going on?
Just last week, 41 Democratic members of Congress visited Israel. They represented a wide spectrum of the Democratic caucus, including many freshmen who were in Israel for the first time. Just 2 or 3 weeks before that, 398 out of the 435 members of Congress, a wide bipartisan majority, voted for a resolution that condemned the BDS movement and supported a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Those are still the fundamentals. But it does appear that Prime Minister Netanyahu has made a calculation that his ability to achieve successful results for Israel, but also successful results in his own political struggles in Israel, depend on having no daylight between himself and President Trump. Depend on using that relationship at all costs, and no matter what friction it creates with Democrats in the United States. It should be possible for any Israeli Prime Minister to have a strong, positive working relationship with the President of the United States, and yet be sensitive to those Americans who do not feel that that president represents their values. In this case, a president who's as divisive as any we've ever had. That's way out of balance right now, and Prime Minister Netanyahu has contributed to that getting way out of balance. It started even before Trump was president with his speech to the Congress against President Obama's Iran policy that was arranged with the Republican leadership of Congress. The time has come to rebalance, and unfortunately what happened today is a bad step in the wrong direction.
To be clear, you said this is unprecedented. Has any American congressperson ever been banned from Israel before?
I'm not aware of any precedent for an American member of Congress being banned from traveling in Israel. It certainly has never happened in my public service career, and it's not in keeping with the kind of close, intimate relations between two allies that permit us to have strong consultations, visits between each other, and even criticism and disagreements. We don't have to agree on everything. We can even work through those disagreements as allies, but not when you refuse to talk to each other.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for your time.
You're welcome.